platform is being live streamed on YouTube and Cleveland's Channel 20. It can be seen on the Cleveland City Council website and from Council's Facebook page. In accordance with Ohio's open meetings regulations as amended by House Bill 404, notice of this committee hearing was publicly posted. This committee hearing and all committee hearings are conducted in accordance with council rules and Robert's Rules of Order. The chair will facilitate the meeting and hold all persons speak, raise your hand. We all know that. As is usual practice, any vote, you have to be present, but we're not going to vote, so we don't need to worry about that. So I will, how many vote? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to call the roll, but I am going to call the meeting to order. And I'm going to begin with just an agenda of what I hope to cover today. Today is nothing more than an update of the resolution that we passed in the summer related to activities with the House Bill 6 actors as they may relate to Cleveland City Council in the interest of the city of Cleveland. This investigation is ongoing, but because it's been in the news, I wanted to provide an update of where we are and what the next steps were going forward. The only guest we have today is Assistant Director Kane, who will talk about the impact of the proposed legislation had it been enacted on the city of Cleveland, Cleveland Public Power, and the general fund that supports it. So with that, I'm going to begin. I'm going to share my screen, and I've got just some slides to go through, which you should have gotten in your email, and I will send it to all council members after the hearing. I was tinkering with it up until just a little bit ago. Okay, can people see the screen? Is that a yes?
No.
No, darn.
I can't at least.
Okay. Hang on one sec. That's why we're practicing. Hang on one sec. Share screen. How about now?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Okay, so I want to begin by just refreshing on Resolution 605-2020, which we passed in the summer just after the HB6 corruption investigation was launched. Resolution 605-2020, though the purpose of this was to investigate whether any of the actors, entities, affiliates, etc., who were involved in the HB6 corruption probe were also acting adversely to the city of Cleveland, specifically Cleveland Public Power. The purpose of today's hearing is to update council members on the investigation of HB6 actors as related to the city of Cleveland, review the publicly available information on various HB6 actors, and this is done without any extraordinary means. We have not used any subpoena power. We have not used any legal means. This is really an exercise in trying to determine all the various 501c4s, LLCs, PACs, the reporting requirements, and trying to link them to activities that happen within the city of Cleveland and talk about next steps. As I go through this, I would just like to highlight that as this is presented, this is the publicly available information and they are related to HB6, but I'm not suggesting that anything that happened by any of the actors at this point was illegal. I'm only trying to get back to the original purpose of our resolution, which is to establish that dark money was actively working against the city of Cleveland. But please don't jump to any conclusions or misconstrue anything I say as suggesting that they're operating illegally. That is not yet determined, and I'm not going to suggest that today. We all talk about dark money. We're in politics. We know what it is, but just for the sake of being thorough, dark money is political spending by nonprofit organizations, for example, 501c4s, social welfare, trade associations that are not required to disclose their donors. They often have righteous sounding names, which we'll cover later, but that is what dark money is. On August 12th, we passed our Resolution 605-2020. which gave the Finance Committee authority to investigate the actions of affiliates and entities funded or controlled by or in the name or named in the federal indictment related to House Bill 6 corruption probe as relates to the state of Cleveland, and I would determine the procedure for doing so. Again, today is a presentation of the initial findings based solely off of publicly available documents. This is a long section of the Finance Committee, which I think everybody on this call sat through, so no sense me reading through this, but you can read through that at your leisure. On the 21st of July 2020, the FBI unsealed a affidavit of its criminal conspiracy involving the 6 people mentioned there. And the summary is in paragraph 9 of the affidavit that kind of talks about how these entities are strung together for the purpose of passing House Bill 6 in the General Assembly. This is just some of the coverage that's been ongoing by various media outlets ever since it happened. It's a fairly frequent reporting on this, and I believe it's far from over. But that's just some of the snapshots of HB6. Now, when we're talking about what is it that we were investigating or what were we looking for, we're looking for the use of dark money to acquire, a legislative solution. The use of undisclosed dollars to come up with a legislative solution. The use of dark money to affect the composition of the legislature, that's more of an HB6 thing. But as you can see in the paragraph below, how Company A's payments for their own benefits, they sought to gain support of households, a political bid to become speaker, and you can kind of read the rest. The reason I'm going through some House Bill 6 stuff is really just to give you a sense of how these things go, the general operation, and then I'll get specifically into Cleveland. Here's just an example of how dark money is used and how it's hard to track and how it's put together. There's a group called Protect Ohio Clean Energy Jobs, which sounds very righteous, and they were responsible for purchasing the Facebook ads asking people to not sign or remove their names from the referendum petitions for HB6. The FBI affidavit in paragraph 29 talks about Matthew Borges being a registered lobbyist for Company 1A, and he was a key middleman at the center of the effort to thwart the referendum. And again, you can read that the rest at your leisure, but just a snapshot of how these things generally go. We have Protect Ohio Energy Clean Jobs. They received $90,000 and Matt Borges gave them $90,000. Protect Ohio Clean Energy Jobs spent things such as legal fees, consulting, more consulting, media placement, legal fees, bank fees. But basically this, if you look at how they spend money, they've taken it from one entity to another and they're continuing to pass it down. And here's a better kind of summation. And this is just, again, a sampling of the numerous actors that are involved in First Energy. But basically Company A funded Generation Now. They funded this 17 Consulting Group, LLC, no reporting needed. They funded Matt Borges, who funded Protect Ohio Energy Jobs, Topaz, their legal fees. There's another company called eSpec Consulting, LLC, and the list goes on. But this is just, if you look at how does dark money get hidden, this is the way that it's done, and it's done frequently and legally. So last comment on HB6, just for background, is this is a list of all the individuals and entities that were listed in either the affidavit, the first affidavit, or the subsequent Ohio Attorney General's complaint on HB6. So you can see there are numerous actors that played numerous roles in this. There's a lot of text on this next screen, I encourage you to peruse this at your own leisure. It's more of just a timeline of HB6, but that's all interesting. It's terrible, it's corrupt, but it's interesting. But the question for our committee is, did these entities and individuals funnel dark money into operations adverse to Cleveland? That's really where we started, and to us, that is the inquiry. Um, and to that, we're all aware of an organization called Consumers Against Deceptive Fees. Um, appears to be an astroturf dark money organization to acquire a legislative solution. So this is the bullets that follow are just kind of things that just don't seem to make perfect sense. For example, why on February 21st would somebody out of Cincinnati and in Cincinnati register the Consumers Against Deceptive Fees as a 501c4 with the Ohio Secretary of State? And then subsequently in May, a Macedonia CPA was appointed as a subsequent statutory agent in the Secretary of State's office by an attorney of Retzel out of their Akron office, who's no longer with the firm. September 19th, there was yet another Secretary of State filing with appointing a local CPA. And then in 18, they hired Remington Road Group, which is a Columbus lobbying firm. We know them in addition to calling us about this, about Verizon and AT&T and poll access. So this is what they do, is they seek legislative solutions. Once we passed our resolution, once HB6 happened, Consumers Against Deceptive Fees filed to a certificate of dissolution with the Secretary of State's office. So as of today, they are no longer an entity of going concern. They are dissolved, and that happened. They filed in October of 2020. That's just kind of a high-level view. Here's some more of the specifics of what they did. They registered their website, began propagating content. We went over this. They registered Consumers Against Deceptive Fees. They created a Facebook page with 4 people controlling it. They series of public records requests to the city on Cleveland Public Power related issues. There's a new website that was designed and launched. And then finally, again on May, there was a new secretary. In May of 18, a new statutory agent was appointed. So what is Consumers Against Deceptive Fees doing? What are they interested in, and how did they go about it? What we've kind of found is that there's really 2 major buckets. There's a public relations campaign that was designed to undermine the confidence in Cleveland Public Power. This involved social media, mailings, canvassing, and door hangers, and the spread of misinformation. The legislative end was introduction and passage of an ordinance that would have made it impossible for Cleveland Public Power to function. They passed around sample legislation, talking points, and lobbied council. I can't give any more information other than just to kind of point out a coincidence as we go through this, is that a lot of the mailings and a lot of the efforts, the public relations things, the mailing, social media, coincided with various lawsuits that CPP was a party to that were in court. But again, that's just a correlation more than anything I can say conclusively. So again, social media. This is a snapshot of their social media posts and their purchases from August 19th through October 12th. You can see they all cost, somewhere between, $100 and $800. And they were fairly active in this period of time between August and October 18. Similar timeline, or the timeline just after that, they were active in doing lit drops with door hangers that were anti-Cleveland Public Power. They hired Remington Road Group to meet with members of council. They distributed their sample legislation to council members that they created, by the way. This wasn't something we created. They created this and tried to push for its introduction. They met with council people, and this is just a sideline what I said before. This is November 18th, and then about in January of 19, the judge threw out the class action suit against Cleveland Public Power, and that's neither here nor there, but it just kind of talks of the timeline that they're working with them. Then there's another kind of a period of time where they're active again on social media, purchasing anti-CPP ads on Facebook and spending money to promote these. Anybody who's on Facebook, I believe, knows that there are the things that you do organically and people like your post and they might share it or whatever they do on Facebook. There's also a way of paying to promote your ad. And these are paid ads, political advertisements on Facebook during this period of time. You see these 6 here. And this is just a snapshot of what those ads looked like. So that's kind of like the social media. And by the way, we all have, I believe, and I can provide them if you don't, copies of the various mailings that they did. The one was just a sample, but they did various mailings throughout this period of time, along with the door hangers and supporting the social media campaign as well. So if anybody needs those, I have copies and I'd be happy to share all of those, but I don't want to bog us down too much. So this is more of the public relations thing. Where it really, became problematic is if they tried to convince council members to introduce their sample legislation. And if you read this, it's really, it talks about just very high-minded stuff like transparency, fairness, openness, and clarity. And, things that I think we all support. And it just kind of talks about values that we all support. And it sounds, pretty good. But again, when I first saw this, when I first learned of this, I made it pretty clear I wasn't going to introduce it because the real issue comes in the next part of their sample ordinance, the repeal language. So beneath all their flowery language of transparency and openness, they wanted to essentially limit the capacity of Cleveland Public Power to negotiate and to sell power to commercial customers, which many believe, myself included, to be the end game of Company A, because those are the customers that they really want. So they want us to repeal these sections of our code that give Cleveland Public Power the authority to do that. And after this kind of after it was pretty clear that we weren't going to be introducing this for the reasons stated, there's a little bit of a slower period. And back in September, they start up again. And again, it's similar to the timeline of the lawsuit. But at this point, what I would like to do is pause, and I want to ask Assistant Director Kane if he would comment on the slides that I presented, specifically in terms of the legislative, the sample legislation and what effect that might have on Cleveland Public Power. If you could just basically let me know if what I stated is correct, if this is your reading. And before you say anything else, Assistant Director, I will just want to give everybody a kind of a heads up that there are 2 important lawsuits that are in process right now. And what the Assistant Director can tell us is pretty limited. He can't go into any detail about energy adjustment charge or the Brooklyn Solar or anything like that. But I've asked him to opine specifically on this legislation and whether the information that was passed around was factual. So Assistant Director Kane, are you with us still?
I am. Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And good afternoon, members of council. And I should preface it by saying I don't have the proposed legislation in front of me. I did have enough conversations with the council president to understand, and I would agree with the points that the council president has made. Obviously, it's imperative that CPP have the ability to charge for the power that we buy, right? And if you can't do that, then you go out of business. And all of the other issues, as you stated, many of the issues that were outlined, that you told me were outlined, are currently being litigated, and I would not have authority to make any comments on that. As it pertains to the truthfulness of their ads, and I talked to many of council members, council colleagues as they were coming out, and we spent a great deal of time refuting point by point and then presenting those to council and mailing out and social media, trying to refute just the inaccuracies that were either flyered or door hangered or on social media. A tremendous amount of time from CPP and DPU and the city of Cleveland, just point by point. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss those.
Thank you very much, Assistant Director. So again, I don't want to ask you anything more than you are would be prudent to say with the legal climate that we're in, but by repealing these sections, after you get to the flowery language about transparency and openness, the language to repeal our ability to the electric service agreements with commercial customers and the capacity enhancement incentive schedule, the ability to negotiate with commercial and industrial customers, that would have made it, is it a correct statement that would have made it impossible for Cleveland Public Power to exist?
Can't compete. Yes, it'd be accurate.
And just another question, I just want to make sure I'm correct about this because I've told a few people this. In the event that CPP would fail, who would be responsible for the debt?
For the
would the general fund be responsible for the debt and the obligations of CPP?
Sure, it could be, Chairman. Yes.
And again, the information that was put forth was false and
that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to get an expert opinion on that.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So back to the presentation. This was the enough is enough, and a lot of us got this. But getting back to the real question, you know, in terms of dark money affecting the city of Cleveland, how did this group finance this effort? Now, we talked about printing, there were mailing fees, there were lawyers involved, there were public relations, there was polling, and there was staff involved. So that's not free. Nobody is going to do that for free. And quite frankly, it's not cheap. They did not post online or anywhere it was accessible the 990s for the group. So we had our staff go and knock on the door of the statutory agent and demand them. And when we did, it was pretty much what we anticipated. In year one, this group, this Consumers Against Deceptive Fees, received $351,000 $351,000 that they took in. Now, all of us on this call, all members of council have at least some familiarity with raising money in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. And $351,000 is a big sum that is very hard to achieve in 1 year. But they certainly did. And you see a little bit from, this is all, again, this is publicly available, taken right from their 990s, all of the fees that are listed. In 2019, they received a lump sum of $200,000. And again, with this, they paid, this is right from the 990, the management fee, legal fees, accounting fees, IT, polling and mailing, research. So a lot of money was spent adverse to Cleveland Public Power. So, you know, the question is, who has an interest in doing this? Why would an organization take these steps towards Cleveland Public Power? So to simplify the question, where did the money come from? Well, we learned with the filing of an organization called Partners for Progress, Inc., that they received money from Company A. Now, again, just pause for a second. The point of our resolution was to determine whether there was any relationship between the actors in the HB6 corruption and those acting adverse to Cleveland Public Power. Well, here you see a very clear link between Company A and Consumers Against Deceptive Fees. Now, we can hopefully even before this happened, that an organization had $551,000 that was raised in 2 years should not pass the smell test from the very beginning. Well, after the filing of the 990s, it's very clear that Company A gave to Partners in Progress, who also gave to Generation Now, but they are the entity that made the $200,000 contribution to Consumers Against Deceptive Fees. So if you ask the question, who had an interest in Cleveland Public Power not being able to continue as an entity, I think it's fairly obvious. Looking at the 990s that were finally filed, and it was first came out in a story by the Cincinnati Enquirer, but they filed their 990 in mid-November of last year, and they contributed $200,000 to Consumers Against Deceptive Fees. Partners for Progress is, and this is significant, reference in both the FBI affidavit and included in the Ohio Attorney General's complaint, listing the Attorney General's complaint lists First Energy as a sole source of their funding. So Partners in Progress is solely funded by Company A, who the Attorney General identifies as First Energy. This is a group that gave $200,000 to a group who was adverse to Cleveland Public Power. Here's just a little bit of a timeline. The purple stacks represent significant events. The blue is just kind of activity that ties it together. And here's just kind of a timeline of what they mailed and how they went about it. Here is the House Bill 6 timeline up top. Here's the Consumers Against Deceptive Fees beneath it. And here's how they lined up. And, it's been suggested by a dark money attorney that the timelines were off, and that what Borges was doing had nothing to do with these events, and it was independent, and the timelines just didn't match up. Well, clearly they do. Clearly the timelines match up, and I can't again, I'm trying to stick with what is publicly available and absolutely beyond refute. I can't say for certain what the coordination was, but to me, back to our original question is, were any of the HB6 entities, actors, affiliates that were caught up in the corruption, were they responsible for adverse actions, Cleveland Public Power? I think the answer is clearly yes. I think that's pretty hard to dispute from the publicly available documents. So then the question is, what are our next steps? And I will say that this is an ongoing investigation. And again, this is just an update of where we are with the publicly available information. Next step's going to be what we're currently doing. We're going to need to go through all of the various HB6 entities, find out who had filing requirements, and see if we can track any more money back and how it would affect Cleveland. But I think just the basic acknowledgement that if ever there was a doubt that HB6 involved, that this bucket of money that was HB6 was also acting in Cleveland, I think that's pretty conclusively resolved. So we're going to continue with the publicly available information. We're investigating our subpoena power now that Consumers Against Deceptive Fees has dissolved, as well as any other legal remedies that we might have. So that's where we are today. And again, I think that it's just important that we go into this with our eyes wide open. The fact that they are no longer in business, that they're dissolved, to me doesn't mean they're over, that this type of activity is over. But we need to always be aware, if you look at what's happening with HB6, when you look at the LeadCo project that we're a partner in and how that almost got almost got sidelined because of one person's decision who happened to get $4 million from company A before he took his post. We have to just be ever vigilant. So at this point, I would like to open up for questions and just kind of frame the question and answer process that, we are here on a dark money issue. Councilman Casey had a series of hearings on Cleveland Public Power, and I don't want to turn to all the woes of Cleveland Public Power because I think we beat those up pretty good. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I want to go to questions. Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. And just like everyone here, dark money is something that should be brought to the light. And we definitely want to be mindful about this dark money. Just some questions and thoughts, Mr. President. One of the statements that was made was that this specific group, whatever this group is, was created to destroy CPP or bring it to its end. My first question is, was CPP going through issues prior to the creation of or the movement of this dark money?
Well, again, Councilman, CPP has been going through issues for decades. And the purpose of today's hearing wasn't necessarily about CPP's problems that they have experienced through decades. It's basically, is there dark money that's infiltrating the city of Cleveland? Because the general fund would be on the hook in the event that CPP were to fail. No
doubt about it. And I appreciate your patience with me. I have a just kind of like your line of question. I have a line of question. I'm getting to a point. And basically the point from what you just said was that CPP has already had issues prior to this organization, whatever organization this is that was created. The residents have been complaining about the problems with CPP much longer than an organization, whatever this organization or whatever this dark money. The second thing I wanted to ask, Mr. President, is when we look at this quote unquote dark money or company A, has company A, as you continue to dig or as council continues to dig, does this money reach any council members here? Does it reach any organizations that are here? Does this money go beyond this organization? Will we also look at the people who are here and ask the question, has anybody here received resources from company A?
I have no knowledge of any council member that has received any payment through Consumers Against Deceptive Fees or others. I have no knowledge of that.
Or from company A directly?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. All right. So when we look at CPP, and I know that we want to focus on, dark money, and once again, none of us want to be a part or attached to anything like that. But the point that I want to make is that my residents, your residents, Cleveland residents are really concerned about the issues with CPP. And I appreciate this. And I'm just hoping, I know that we've had, in the past, we've had hearings about this, and I've been in office going on 4 years, and it seems like we've been in court, or anytime that we ask a question about CPP, we get no answer. But residents don't stop their questioning. And I know that you have a love for this city like I do, and the residents continue to ask questions about CPP, and I have no answers to give them. So I appreciate the energy towards figuring this out, but we also got to put some energy, hopefully more energy, into having hearings and coming up with answers about what's happening with the Cleveland Public Power. If people were doing this because they wanted to destroy, as you said, the issue with CPP is decades old. So what are we doing as a legislative body just to ensure that our residents are being taken care of? These things, Mr. President, is going to take care of itself. The FBI has a way of doing things, and they're going to find the answer. But my question is, when do we put the residents first? This is something that's extremely important.
Yeah, I would say the residents are always first. Ward 13 is almost entirely Cleveland Public Power customers, and myself and my assistant are aware of every single street. But again, Councilman Casey had a series of seven hearings, Councilman Casey? 7 hearings, and we went in detail, and he's been working very diligently to craft a plan that is going to do that. But again, we can talk about, there's problems with CPP. It's the water department's had problems that, historically. But the point of today and why we're in finance is just over the issue of the influences, the money influences that are coming into Cleveland. So the woes of CPP are well documented, and I have no doubt that Councilman Casey is aggressively pursuing those. And his hearing wasn't just his series of hearings weren't just hearings; they were designed to come up with an answer. So,
but Mr. President, we're still talking about we haven't gotten any closer to an answer of what is the issues with CPP. We haven't gotten any closer to any answers.
So what I would suggest, Councilman, is that
I understand, with all due respect, if I can just get the floor, Mr. President, with all due respect, is that I understand what's going on and I appreciate it. But my residents aren't asking about this. They're asking about CPP. Right. And that's what concerns me, that I've been in office going on 4 years and I'm no closer to giving them an answer about CPP than I was yesterday. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you. And I would recommend bringing this up in utilities and speaking with Councilman Casey on what the plan is going forward. But again, we all appreciate the issues with Cleveland Public Power. We all need that entity to succeed for the city of Cleveland, and I think we're all committed to that. But we need to do it without other interests trying to interfere with that. So thank you for that.
The interests are the residents, but if we've had this issue for decades, if these issues are coming up for decades, then again, I would start to look at we have to look at ourselves as the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Plenzik. Councilman Plenzik, you're on mute, but if you could give us your questions.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues. First of all, I want to thank you for the due diligence, Mr. Chairman, that was done on this issue. Could you explain or tell us who did the groundwork on this? Who was it our staff, or did we use outside folks?
It was our staff. I did some, but mostly it was our staff, and our legal team helped as needed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, let me say to all of my colleagues, especially the newer members, should any of us be surprised? No, we should not be surprised at all. First Energy, now formerly what we called in the city of Cleveland, Ready Kilowatt, Illuminating Company, however you want to describe them, they have embarked upon a campaign for decades to gut Cleveland Public Power, formerly Muni Light. I think we've got to step back a moment and look at the entire history here of the process. There were members of City Council, unfortunately, prior to '78 who did their bidding, who took great strides to gut the system by legislative action and by unwilling to take legislative action. Those of us who campaigned, the core group of us that campaigned in the late '70s, myself, Jay Westbrook, Jimmy Rakakis, Mike White, a large other people I can't recall at this time, about Cleveland Public Power. We were confronted with it firsthand. So I want to say to my colleagues again, when we talk about dark money, not only has it been used in the case of Cleveland Public Power, but it will be used this year in councilmatic races. It will be used this year in a mayor's race. We all know it's coming. Okay, so it's a reality. But there has been a concerted plan by the Illuminating Company, now First Energy, to destroy Cleveland Public Power. One action after another. What took place has been laid out on their screen in front of us is just another indication of their devious in willful actions to hurt our power system. They worked their devious plan to put a mayor out of office. We all know what happened with a default, how they lobbied the banks not to roll over the notes. and put the city in default, because then Mayor Kucinich made it very clear he would not sell Cleveland, then Muni Light, Cleveland Public Power. They brought this city to its knees financially. That whole default was nothing more than a political action orchestrated by then the illuminating company and its minions that they had throughout the city of Cleveland, especially in the corporate community. So let there be no question or confusion here that we have been engaged in a war for over 40 plus years with this company, who's taken action every step to hurt us every which way they can. My ward, Ward 8, was a recipient probably of more flyers and mailings than any other ward, because I have the largest customer base of Cleveland Public Power. So I was clearly aware of what they were doing, trying to agitate residents, stir residents up against Cleveland Public Power. But at the end of the day, I want to go back to what Bashir said. They will only be successful. They will only be successful if we don't get Cleveland Public Power on an even keel, on even footing. Cleveland Public Power has been mismanaged. We all know that. That's a given. There's no dispute. This council was poorly advised by the former commissioner of Cleveland Public Power in so many ways. It's hard to describe. But at the end of the day, as we go into this budget round, we go into this new year, we've got to make sure that we take all action necessary to shore up Cleveland Public Power. That's the only way they will not be successful, Mr. Chairman, in what they've attempted to do here. This has been clandestine, it's dastardly, and finally it's been exposed as a result of issue 6 imploding and the federal investigation, which hopefully will leave no stone unturned to all the characters, all the implicators, all the people who were involved in this process, to put additional burden upon the ratepayers in Ohio, residents and businesses alike, deny us the right to have green energy and other forms of energy in our state. But again, I want to go back. This has been a concerted effort. They brought down a mayor.
So,
And so let us not be confused about this bunch as we go forward, and let us be very careful as we go into this campaign year, because who's to say that they might not be involved again in councilmatic races to try to undercut and destabilize our body as they once did, Mr. Chairman, and to my honorable colleagues. Be very aware of that bunch and who is in support of them and what they have done over the years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Councilman. And again, this Cleveland Public Power is something that we all have an interest in seeing its success and seeing it be successful. But if you look at the economic power of Cleveland Public Power versus some of these other energy interests, I mean, we are fighting a very difficult game. But with that, Councilman Brancatelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and certainly thank you for bringing this issue up, especially at this critical time with this investigation. This is obviously a front page headline, and we need to be very, very near to this. One of the questions I had was, as we talked about some of the initiatives we were on around solar and wind and some of our sustainable efforts. So as we look forward, I'm very specifically around a couple landfills in Ward 12, where we're looking at potentially having a solar farm or other types of these sustainable projects. How does this negatively impact us being able to negotiate, especially with CPP as being our primary link to these kind of initiatives?
So because the sample legislation is hopefully, I'm assuming dead and this organization is dissolved, some of the real value in Cleveland Public Power is that it's not regulated by PUCO, and we are able to do things. So with the solar projects that you're talking about, we can certainly do behind the meter type of projects where you are creating the power to serve the footprint that you're on. When we get into putting some of that energy back into the grid, it's a little bit more complicated, and I'm not I'm not, I don't have a good enough handle on what the different rules are, but I think that it's that Cleveland Public Power lead on those is important because they have the ability to execute projects like that, similar to Brooklyn, except, but for the lawsuit, that was a very successful project. But anything behind the meter, we can do without any further permission. But when we start putting power back on the grid, there are certain steps that we need to go through. And Jason Wood and I are talking about that right now.
Yeah, so the study that you've commissioned and some of the project work that I've looked at with Western Reserve and with the County Land Bank and how we can create these solar farms and provide an incredibly more sustainable economy. I think that being able to preserve that and have our partner like CPP is critically important. So I appreciate your efforts with this and look forward to how this continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay. Any further questions? I don't see any other hands up. Councilman Blaine Griffin. Mute. Unmute yourself, Blaine.
Why didn't we subpoena Company A?
So right now, we are investigating what subpoena authority we have in this matter. So I'm working, Rachel is talking to the law department in terms of crafting subpoenas now. So it is, it's not ruled out, but at this point, it's still one of those things we're investigating. It's not as simple as issuing a subpoena. There's certain steps that have to be gone through.
Does Company A, or who we assume may be Company A, have similar fees to CPP?
My understanding is, because what I represent is CPP. I've asked CPP Commissioner, I've confirmed this, if as a broad stroke, before HB 6, they were approximately about even. Okay, now when HB 6 was enacted, it scrubbed the renewable portion that had to be a part of for those that are First Energy customers, the other half of Cleveland that are First Energy customers. That made it so that their rates were lower than CPP rates, but when the HB 6 tax and fees kicked in, that it would even out again. I don't know if Assistant Director Kane is still on to confirm if that is still good information.
Can we hear from Assistant Director Kane?
Assistant Director,
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, overall, that's accurate. And the big part is, once we all know natural gas and the influx of it and the effect that it had on the market. So my understanding of the impetus behind HB 6 was their nuclear was no longer an attractive option, right? It cost substantially more than the natural gas. So they went to the legislature and exerted influence to bail them out of that energy option. But as far as, I don't know what fees specifically you're speaking of, our fees are set by council, and you know exactly what we charge and why we charge it. After the hearings we had at Public Utilities, we went in depth on everything. As far as Company A's fees and the PUCO, I don't know if it's as clearly understood.
Yeah. And I guess that was my question, Assistant Director, is that the fees I was talking about was the fees for illuminating company customers right now are going to be determined on whatever the resolution is with House Bill 6. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that would be, there were a number of different riders and customer charges, specific charges that were going to be instituted as a result of HB 6. But as it currently stands, they won't be implemented, but we don't know what the new version of House Bill 6 will look like yet. But it's still an unanswered question.
Well, Mr. Chair, I punch up. I don't punch down. And I know that everybody wants to focus on a lot of these other players, but the player that I want to focus on is Company A. Company A clearly is trying to influence Cleveland. Company A is hypocrites are hypocrites because their fees are very similar to Cleveland Public Power's. We need to really, in addition to really looking at this dark money, need to illuminate Company A. Company A clearly is trying to undermine the reason why Tom Johnson, not the mayor in 1977, but the mayor back in the early 1900s, created a municipal power authority, was to try to create a moderate cost utility for our city. And Company A clearly has tried to undermine that. Now, I don't care, these other players and these other folks, quite frankly, I think you began with your original comments, Mr. Chair, that I'm not sure what they've done illegally. Because to my knowledge, I don't see anything they've done, but basically, basically, as Councilman Jones said, jumped on the train that some people have already, started to ride down the tracks. But clearly, Company A has been malicious in the way that they approach not just Ohio, but have also approached Cleveland. And I would encourage this council not to muddy the waters and really stay focused on Company A. Company A is not here to try to help Cleveland, to try to help our citizens, to try to help our customers. Company A is here to try to get rid of their competitor. Let's make it plain. Let's make it straight. Let's make it what it is. And the reason that I say that is because I think this council gets dragged in all kinds of rabbit holes for various different reasons. But clearly, we do need to make sure that we hold Company A accountable. The only other thing that I would ask is, the things that they did with renewable energy and how they tried to cut lead co. I really appreciated your presentation, but if I'm understanding, and please help clarify this for me, a lot of the lead co regulations were rolled back by PUCO. Am I correct, Mr. President?
Well, for lead co, the way that one, it was the Ohio Power Siting Board under the leadership of former Sam Randazzo, who is currently under investigation. But what's significant about that is that LEEDCO had worked for years with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Federal Fish and Wildlife Service to come up with a solution that was not harmful to bird migratory patterns and was going to be an environmentally safe, reasonable alternative. And the initial order that would have had the poison pill for LEEDCO was put in by anybody who's watched this, by Sam Randazzo himself over the objections of his own staff and all the others that were on the board. And as we know, he received a payment from First Energy of $4 million right before he accepted that appointment. But that poison pill was his. That was his. And interesting that it came out in some of the depositions leading up to that is that Murray Energy actually funded that one, found the appellants to appeal it all the way through the process because the energy companies weren't allowed, they weren't permitted to be appellants for whatever reason, but they funded the effort to pretty much bring that to the point where it almost collapsed, but for a last minute change in that order. But that was absolutely done by the Ohio Power Siting Board for the reason to kill renewable energy.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. If Company A was successful, has anybody looked at what impact it would have on our utility if they were successful in putting that piece of legislation that you showed? It would have basically killed Cleveland Public Power, which means that rates would have gone up for everybody because competition would have gone down and basically rates would have gone up for all customers. Have there been any studies or anything that showed how that would have impacted it?
We asked Assistant Director Kane early what his opinion would be of if this were enacted. Assistant Director, can you just tell Councilman Griffin your thoughts on if enacted, what the effect it would have had on Cleveland Public Power?
Thank you, Chairman, and to the councilman. Again, the reference piece of legislation I have only seen in this the presentation that the council president shared with me. So I don't have this sample legislation that was proposed by the group, but the inability to charge what we have to buy, right, would have an irreparable harm on the utility, because we couldn't pay for the power that we're contracted to purchase or that we have to purchase to keep our customers on. We wouldn't be able to charge the costs associated with the purchase of that power. So yes, it would be fatal. And in that result, there would not be a municipal utility in the city of Cleveland.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I'm glad that we're having this hearing because, you know, we all knew that this wouldn't stop in Columbus. We all knew that this would end up at our doorsteps, and it's now here. And the only thing that I would tell you is that I think that at some point in time, and I know that we're going to, you know, walk our thin line to what we need to, but at some point in time, we do need to hear from Company A. I know a lot of the officials responsible have either been resigned or have either been fired or whatever you want to call it. But I think at some point in time, that's the person who I want to see. I want to see Company A. The reason that they're so interested is because I think that those are the ones that need to sit here and stand the firing line for these questions. But that being said, I think at the end of the day, it is about our customers, but we also need to call out anytime dark money is trying to influence, not us, because I can care less, you know, about what they try to do with us. The voters will always decide about council people and mayors and everybody else. But what I do have a problem with is that we should always in government, or any time that we're dealing with government affairs, hold everybody to the highest standards of transparency. And to me, what's passed doesn't pass the smell test of this is the transparency. So thank you, Mr. President. And at some point in time, I'm really interested in figuring out how we can really have a discussion with Company A. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brian Casey, and then Brian Mooney, then Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just kind of wanted to go back to the CPP and issues with CPP. You know, in September, October, we did hold a series of 7 meetings with the topics each week on what this dark money has brought to light with the residents. And throughout those meetings, we were able to address every issue. We were able to come up with solutions, and we were able to come up with things that CPP will be doing in the future in order to rectify those issues. And we're not stopping there either. You know, even including at tomorrow's utility hearing, you know, we're bringing in entities from outside the city as well. You know, we're going to be talking to the Citizens Utility Board, Common Sense or Common Cause Ohio, and Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. So it's just not taking a broad look just from council eyes or just from the administration's eyes. You know, we also have outside eyes that are neutral to both CPP and First Energy to come up with solutions to help us address the issues that the residents have. And basically, you know, the residents, what they want is they want to know that when they hit the switch, the light comes on, right? They don't want to know why it doesn't come on. They don't want to know why, you know, it does come on. They just want it to come on. And those are a lot of those issues, I believe, are starting to get resolved. And maybe Councilman McCormick could chime in because he had the biggest number, I think, of outages throughout 2019 and 20. And I think I can attest that those have curtailed. And that's the biggest issue for residents. And as far as rates go, remember, council does set the rates for Cleveland Public Power. And Cleveland Public Power has not had a rate increase since the 1980s, right? So we can say what we want about energy adjustment charge and moratoriums and all this other stuff that I get calls daily regarding. But at the end of the day, it's going to take some tough decisions from the council as well as CPP as to how the future of CPP is going to go. And Councilman Polensek is right when, you know, we've got this monster business coming in and trying to tell us how to run our entity, right? That's not fair. That's not right. And they're going to try to use that influence of their money in order to try to thwart what we have. And what would the city of Cleveland do, or the residents of the city of Cleveland do, if you didn't have an option of CPP? I reside in a ward, and Councilman Slife represents a ward where we don't have that option, right? We can't choose between CPP or First Energy or anybody. So imagine, having a city where a monopoly like that comes in. Imagine how those rates and what residents would be having to pay for electric then. And I'm starting to hear a lot about the moratorium and all that other stuff. Nobody's given the city of Cleveland a moratorium on paying our bills. We're still providing electricity, to the residents and the businesses, and nobody's cutting us a break, right? So, I know that this upcoming year, CPP, Cleveland Public Water and Water Pollution Control are going to be a lot of topics, but I want to keep in mind that, the city of Cleveland owns, Cleveland Public Power, and the city council, I guess, if you had to compare it to Company A, we're the board of directors, right, for this company that we own, and we should do everything we can in order to protect Cleveland Public Power and to make sure that Cleveland Public Power thrives and we're able to provide the best service to any resident, and probably in the long run expand the city of Cleveland. So, with that being said, I'd be more than happy to meet with any council person who wasn't able to attend any of the meetings, to provide, what the city has provided to me, to go over again what we went over. But, we took all these, we took 7 issues, from rates to outages to everything, and we broke them down and held the administration and CPP accountable for them. And I believe that CPP is on the right path. Councilman Polensek was again right. What maybe we were deceived in the past, but I don't believe that that's the future of Cleveland Public Power. And I think we need to do everything we can to ensure that Cleveland Public Power is here for the long run. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman. Councilman Brian Mooney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, and looking at this discussion, I would agree this discussion isn't about inadequacies of CPP or problems of CPP. CPP, the purpose is, that's for a different form. CPP is a victim here. And I think more importantly, the residents of Cleveland are a victim. I know you're just giving us information. It's interesting to follow this presentation, but this Company A and all the affiliates, we can't just look at Company A. We have to look at where the money and follow the money, because this is set up. If you look at the federal RICO indictment, it's not just First Enter or Company A. It's through all these things, and then working in concert together, all the things they did to further the goal of the enterprise. And this is similar to a certain degree, that we're looking at all these organizations and their efforts to undermine Cleveland, to undermine our electric company. So, just for today, I don't want to hear about the inadequacies, because that's like bashing the victim here, and the taxpayers are the victim. And you have to look at all these players, I think, and follow the money to see where it went and to see how it was utilized in a very shady way, because it was cleansed through different people and different organizations. In the past, it was more direct. They worked to bring down a mayor, as Polensek said, but now they do it a different way. And, it is important to know who they gave money to, all these entities, all these different entities. And just because they gave money doesn't mean that anything improper was necessarily done, but it's something to know, and looking at this, how this money was funneled. And it was to no good. This money from your presentation was designed for one thing, and that was to kill Cleveland Public Power by any means necessary, to hurt the city of Cleveland, hurt the residents of Cleveland. So we can't just ignore where this money's gone or what it's done. And I hope we can just stay focused, at least for the purpose of this, instead of just defending almost the people that were doing this, saying what they did is legal, is concentrating that there are citizens, our residents are the victim in this. And we should be aware of how this money was spent to undermine and to try to destroy one of the big assets of the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Bashir Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair. What my colleague said is exactly the part of the problem. And that is that the victim, as you said, is the residents, but the victim is not CPP. CPP is not the victim. The victim are the residents who expect good quality from the city. Those are who the victims are. And the fact is, as we know, that before, this is not about, the dark money will come to light, right? But the problem is that the real issue is the bad service. That's the real issue. That's the real concern. And, my friend and colleague, Chairman Casey, said that, we are the board of directors. We're supposed to be like the board of directors, but I've been on council for going on 4 years, and I'm no closer to an answer than I was 4 years ago. I'm no closer to it. I'm no closer. And I've been here, and we've been asking these questions, and the answer is no closer to us. So in reality, we are undermining ourselves. We undermine ourselves with bad service. We undermine ourselves with residents calling and being on hold for hours. We undermine ourselves with bad service, and we open the door for competition. Should these people have spent this money? Absolutely not. Should dark money be going? Absolutely not. But let's not throw away the responsibility. And it's a big problem for me. And as we go into 2021, that we have to allow the administration to speak for itself. It always seemed like there's no complete answer. No one has a complete answer. And what we end up doing is, whoever the chair is of that conversation of the day, we kind of step in a little bit too much and take up for people and kind of like, well, let me say it in a way that makes sense. No. The fact is that we need for the administration to have complete answers on why things are going the way that it's going. And it's been going this way for a long time. Before there was a such thing as dark money, we've had serious problems with CPP.
But again,
if I can finish, Chair, that it's imperative that we recognize that. And not just recognize it, but move forward to make a change. So yes, we want to find it. Okay, that's good. But at the same time, are we going to put this same energy and this same attention to fixing the problem at CPP? Are we taking the same energy towards that as well? Are we taking the same, if I can finish. Everybody get a chance to speak. If I could just finish. Sometimes it seems like that if we have a difference of opinion, we get kind of cut off. I have a difference of opinion than you, Chair. I have a difference of opinion. And I think that's the diversity is a way for us to move our city forward. I can feel differently than you. So how I look at it, how I feel about it, is that the same energy that we're putting a lot of energy into this. But before there was a such thing as dark money that we knew of, we've been talking about CPP years ago. And what we need to see is the administration having clear-cut answers. And as a council, it's our job to make sure they do, not to take up for them and not to speak for them, but let them speak for themselves so that we can change the situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And again, we are here to not speak for anybody. We're here to update on the investigation that's taken place into what we discussed in the summer. And that's the purpose of what we're having this discussion for. Councilman Charles Slife.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to you and to council staff who have, worked hard to get all of this information put together. I sit back and, sometimes when you see things like this, you're trying to understand what the long-term strategy is. And I'm baffled at this one. I worked in industrial development across the country with large utility companies that have active roles in economic development that are working to bring in business to support communities, which is good for local areas, but good for them. They're able to, have more customers. And just what I see here is what's the strategy if company A is First Energy, by depleting the ability for a municipal provider to operate, destabilize the city by being forced to go into its own general fund to, cover losses in the utility. All that would do is, it would devastate Cleveland. It would devastate this region as a whole. And it just seems like you're in your greed to get rid of competition, you're actually creating detriment to your long-term business plan. So it's absolutely shocking to me. And I think we are Cleveland City Council. We are the oversight of Cleveland Public Power, but there really are regional implications here for how this would-be actor, I suppose, headquartered in this region is acting as a corporate citizen. Something that also gives me discomfort, if it is fully determined that Company A is First Energy, is that just north of Cleveland City Hall, there's a pretty large city facility with named First Energy Stadium. And I'd be interested in understanding, with that being our building and the details of the naming rights agreement, if that would be permanent, or if we would have any recourse in that, because the idea that an organization could undercut a local government simultaneously deriving substantial marketing revenue from it, that's frustrating. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the good news about that is that First Energy Stadium is powered by Cleveland Public Power. And not a lot of people know that, but that's a very big customer that we are permitted to negotiate fees with, and we're permitted to have them as a customer. So it's but that's one of the ironies of Cleveland. But I'd be happy to talk to you. I went down that road when it first happened. I'd be happy to give you an update on how that all came about. Councilman Mike Plunzik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there's been this has been a very good discussion and process. And again, I want to thank you for taking the action so we could have this discussion among us and the due diligence that you've undertaken so far. I just wanted to focus on a moment. I think all of us need to understand more how the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio operates. And I hope in the course of your due diligence that you could do a little bit digging into the structure of that. I know it was set up by the legislature and eons ago, but I'd like to know the present members of the PUCO, where they came from. And I know there's some positions that are open at this point, I understand, that are to be filled, I guess, by the governor. I think we need to take a very good hard look at the PUCO because it has a big impact upon us. It's had a big impact upon green energy, sustainability in the state of Ohio. We see the recent scandals where the chairman had to step down. But I hope in the process of your due diligence, we could get a better understanding of how the PUCO affects our local rates. I know it doesn't affect Cleveland Public Power because, as has been said by my colleagues, City Council is essence the board of directors in partnership with the administration. But no doubt about it, actions that have been taken in this state have been to adversely affect consumers, businesses, ratepayers. And we're all paying that price ultimately somewhere. If we're not paying it directly in our utility bills, we're paying it in other costs and fees and services. So again, I would hope that we could get a better and broader explanation about the PUCO. And again, at some point, as my colleagues have all basically alluded to, Blaine, et cetera, at some point, we've got to hold First Energy accountable and responsible for the action that they've taken to harm the city of Cleveland. There's no doubt about what they've done. Time will tell. Let's hope the federal investigation is thorough, leaves no stones unturned, and those who've been involved in these dastardly plans and actions will be held accountable and prosecuted to the fullest extent under the law. But let's look at the PUCO. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no other hands, I want to thank everybody for their attendance today, and looking forward to tomorrow's Utilities Committee meeting as well. But I will thank everybody, and if there's nothing for the good of the order, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.